Welcome to the second Sky Cricket podcast of 2024 with me, Mike Atherton. Nasser is alongside me as ever. We're going to be joined by Ben Duckett shortly, so we might talk about short left-handed openers. Nasser, who've retired from cricket recently. Dean Elgar is one, David Warner another, but Heinrich Klaassen as well. Only 4 test matches, but has announced his retirement for test match cricket. I guess that's symptomatic of the way the game is going.
Absolutely. I think the two high-profile ones there, and you wrote about it a couple of weeks ago, Warner and Elgar. Heinrich Klaassen has played 4 test matches, and I think the way South African cricket is going and the side they've sent off to New Zealand, I think at his age he sees his future in white ball cricket. He's a fabulous white ball cricketer. David Warner and Elgar are absolutely polar opposites with the way they saw the game, the way they came into the game, the way they played the game. And it's a sign maybe of there are different ways to skin a cat, really, of being successful at the top of the order. Elgar grind out a score, bat for his life, tough as they come, absolutely tough nut cricketer. David Warner would be one of Australia's great all-format players. He's, 5th on their test match list of run getters. Maybe a discrepancy with home and away form.
I was going to ask that. I mean, I think he averages 58 at home, 31 or 32 away from home, but in particular has struggled in India and England, which are the kind of principal tours now for Australia when they go away from home playing long test series.
Is that a product, do you think, of how he came in? He was ahead of the curve. He was a trailblazer in coming in T20 cricket, white ball cricket, and continued batting like that in test match cricket. Now, I sound a bit old school. Do you think in England you do have to have a bit more technique? You do have to have a bit more first-class cricket behind you to grind out a score? Or would that be too simplistic?
Well, I think his technique's fine. I mean, you don't get 26 test hundreds without, or whatever it is, without a good technique. But I just think the contrasting conditions between England and India and Australia, and I do think that's one area that you can't put him in the absolute highest rank because he hasn't got hundreds in England and India and I think West Indies and Sri Lanka. But I agree with you, across formats, one of Australia's great players. I think Pat Cummins said Australia's greatest all-format player. It's probably a good time to bring in Ben, actually. Ben, how are you? We were talking about David Warner there. I just wondered whether, you know, as somebody who came in from T20s, is a very aggressive player at the top of the order, was he somebody you looked at and thought, well, if he can do it that way, I can do it that way as well?
Yeah, exactly right. A few of the Northants lads, when I started opening, kind of compared me to him a bit then. But, you know, at the time I was thinking, you know, no way. But he did give me that belief that you don't have to, you know, play that kind of old school way as an opening batsman. He liked to take the game on. And that was kind of how I was told to go out and do it when I first did it for Northants. And that's kind of stuck with me ever since.
We should say congratulations, first of all. I saw over Christmas on social media that you got engaged to your young lady, Paige, or not so. I mean, I think she's a bit older than you, isn't she? But anyway, congratulations, first of all.
Yeah, thank you. I've been busy in my couple of weeks off.
I saw you got into a spat with somebody on Twitter because when you posted the photo of your engagement, it was kind of in front of a blank one. There seemed to be absolutely no furniture in the house. Can you assure us there's some furniture there somewhere?
Yeah, there is, to be fair. We weren't sat on the floor at Christmas. I think that's just the beauty of Twitter, and people can't just say congratulations.
Okay, so you're in Abu Dhabi. That's where England are preparing for the tour of India, which has raised some comment, actually. I mean, in days gone by, I only toured India once in 1993, but I think we were in India for 3 or 4 weeks before we played our first test match. You get a lot of prep time, a lot of not just net time, but middle time as well. And as you know, if you go to India, you've got so many young spinners there that will bowl at you in the nets. It's quite a good time to get some preparation in. But under Brendan McCullum and Ben Stokes, England are looking to do it very differently this time. Just explain the rationale and the theory behind that.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously wasn't in those conversations, but, you know, guys are away a lot, and I guess in India you are pretty hotel bound. You know, the luxury of being in Abu Dhabi is you can get out, and get out and about for an extra 10 days that we wouldn't be able to do if we were on tour to India. So I guess that's one side of it. And the other side is, I've seen the schedule, and there's training every single day. We're going to be, hitting thousands of balls, and bowlers are going to be bowling to us. And I guess the last point is, there probably is loads of spinners in India, but, none of them are, Jadeja, Axar Patel and Ashwin. You might face some 15-yard off spinner in the nets in India, but it's not really going to equip you for that first Test match. So I think we've got quite a big squad, and there'll be hours of training each day. So I'm sure that's the reasonings behind it.
Steve Harmison in particular made some pretty pointed criticisms. I just wondered whether you felt, that he had a point in certain aspects. He said, well, if it was the Ashes, you wouldn't do it this way. You'd get out to Australia, try and get plenty of game time under your belt there. What's the difference? This is a 5-test match tour, equally important. It's a fair point that he makes, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously everyone's entitled to their opinions, and I've probably got to be slightly careful because I wasn't the person who made that decision or was involved in those conversations. But, I guess the biggest point is, India can be a really tough place to tour. I think everyone knows that. And, it's such a long tour. I think we get back, middle of March, and a lot of that's going to be spent in hotels. And I guess a big thing about this team and why we've been so successful is, the way that Baz and Stokesy have led us, and people have probably raised their eyebrows at times, but I'd say it's gone fairly well. And I think the mental side of the game is just as important. And as I say, it's I don't think there's too many complaints from that squad who are having 10 days in Abu Dhabi, rather than 10 days, potentially stuck in a hotel room.
And the tour itinerary is a strange one. I mentioned again that in days gone by, you travel around India. It's very different now. You've got 2 tests that come back to back. Then there's a long 9-day break, then 2 more tests, then a long break, then a 5th test. What are you planning to do in those long breaks?
Yeah, I'm sure the golf clubs will be coming out, knowing this squad and the management. So I think it's, I've obviously had a tour out there, and it can be really tough at times. So I think it'll be, keeping the morales high and keeping the group, whatever that may be, whatever they have in store for us. I'm not 100% sure just yet. I'm sure I'll find that all out very soon. But it's a group of lads who get on so well, and I'm sure there'll be a little bit of golf in there as well as training, I'm sure.
Talk about preparation in Abu Dhabi. You've got to be careful that everyone just presumes it's going to spin and spin big. I'm sure it will at times, but as an opener, you will have so many different challenges. You've got to prepare for so many different things. First of all, Shami, Siraj, Bumrah. So you've got to make sure those pitches in Abu Dhabi you're training on, and the bowlers you face, there is enough zip and movement to prepare for that. Then you're going to have the threat of spin. You may have some very flat surfaces. Also opening the batting against the new ball with spin bowled against you. So are you getting all these things round in your head? Are you someone that is meticulous about your preparation for where you're going to tour?
Yes and no. I think kind of where my game's at is because it's quite simple, and I don't overthink too much. But I'll be totally honest, when I got that call, kind of around, a few months back, this time last year, to go to Pakistan, I was already thinking about this tour, and not in an arrogant way, like I thought I was still going to be playing for England this time. But, I remember last time I went to India, and it was quite a shock. Bangladesh first. And I've been thinking in my head and planning a lot about how I'm going to go about it out there, more so to spin. You make a good point that, people talk about how good their spin bowling is, but at the top of the order against that seam attack, it's going to be tough no matter how flat the pitch is. But yeah, I've obviously just played against, in my eyes, the best seam attack in the world this summer. So, similar kind of things to that. But yeah, I think the preparations certainly in Abu Dhabi are going to be, slightly different. It'll be facing that new ball with spin and how we're going to go about it. I think it's going to be interesting. I'm certainly not going to, I don't think I would get out blocking as many times as I did when I was last over. That's been a lot of my thinking about my options and, what are my best options going out there, low risk and high risk.
I wanted to touch on that tour 2016, I think it was 2016-17 in some detail, which was the first time you'd been picked for England. So we're talking, what, 6 or 7 years ago. You were a much younger man, probably a very different player. Just tell us a little bit about how you see yourself now compared to then, both as a player, technically wise, and also, you know, in terms of your maturity and growth since then.
Yeah, I think maturity is a big one for me in those years. You know, I've played a lot of cricket since then, a lot of learnings, and that was my first real setback, and I had to go away and kind of deal with that. But you know, I think the biggest time, you know, this time around is that it's not going to be a shock whatever they throw at me. You know, I've played on those kind of pitches. You know, I know full well what to expect when I get out there. Yeah, it was a really tough time, but you know, if you told me back then you're going to get another crack at it, however many years down the line, and another chance to come out here, then you know I'd have been pretty happy. So yeah, I think I can take learnings from potentially how I went about it then. But I think also my game's come on a long way since then.
What could you learn, Ben? What would you have done differently? I mean, you were labelled ridiculously, and I know it made you cross that you weren't a good player of spin. It was high quality spin onto an absolute Bunsen burners. But what would you have done differently?
It's a tough question because obviously it was a complete, you know, different team led by a different management. And to be honest, I feel like, you know, I was actually outdone there by a couple of times by, you know, in my eyes, the best off spinner ever, certainly in those conditions. And I look on since then, and I wasn't the last left-hander to struggle out there against Ashwin. I'll be totally honest. You know, he's so good in those conditions. He's so good everywhere. You know, I'd have probably. It was just a learning that the way that I see a lot of English players play spin, and that front leg, can go a bit leg side, because in England it doesn't spin that much, and you can clear your leg and kind of your hands will get you out of trouble. And that's just how I played, because I never came up against anything like that. You know, I've come away and worked on that a lot, and you know, I'm sure he's going to get me out again. You know, he's a world-class bowler. But I would back myself now on a good pitch, or, you know, a flatter pitch, to not feel like I had to just go and, you know, play aggressive shots or sweep them every ball. And then on the other hand, certainly with the way that this team have played over the last kind of 18 months, you know, if those pitches are spinning big and it's really hard, I know what my strengths are, and I'm certainly not going to kind of die wondering. And I think it's just going to be about finding a method to keep the board ticking over, and at times getting down the other end, or picking a bowler you feel like you could score quicker against.
Just go back to that first test in Chittagong, and clearly my words weren't particularly inspirational to you, given that I gave you your first cap and it didn't go that well in that game.
No, it didn't. I mean, it's really weird that seems so long ago, and I couldn't even tell you what I scored. And the reason for that is because it obviously wasn't a great couple of innings. But obviously we won that test, which was amazing. And then, you know, I look at that second test, and that is when I went out there after 3 low scores and went, I'm just going to go and try and smack it from ball 1 here. And
so that was Dhaka. You went Chittagong, Dhaka, and I remember that pitch. I mean, that would be pretty close in Dhaka to the kind of pitches that I think England played on in India last time. It spun from ball 1, didn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's another huge learning that me and Zach at the top of the order, we've got to kind of realise that in the first couple of balls and kind of judge that wicket. And, you know, if we feel like it's going to be a terrible pitch, sometimes getting 60 or 50 or, you know, whatever that may be is going to be a valuable knock for the team. And certainly with that new ball, at times we might have to, although they're an incredible seam attack, potentially try and take the seam down before the spin comes on. And these are just little things that I'm really looking forward to, because I know under Baz and Stokesy that, you know, we will have full license to go and do whatever we want. And, you know, it might be a pitch that doesn't feel like it's spinning or nipping and we can just play normally. It might be, you know, green top early on and we can go and express ourselves. So I think the beauty of playing under this team right now is almost the harder the conditions are, it's going to be enjoyable, because we know we can go and play however we want to play and try and enjoy it.
Before we look ahead to India, how proud are you of what you have done at the top of the order? You know, it's a bit left field. I remember Rob Key standing on the outfield about a year and a bit ago, or a bit more longer than that actually, telling me, you know, the one lad we really like. I think you'd been called into the Oval squad or something, and they'd had a look at you, and he said, Duckett looks a real good player. I think we're going to open with him. How proud you can big up the regime, you can big up McCullum and Stokes and Key and all that, but how proud are you of what you have done at the top of the order and the way you've gone about your business?
Yeah, I'm just thankful that whenever Keezy I played against him at Kent, I used to get 100. So that's probably, I think Keezy, you know, remembers things and they stick in his brain. And I'm thankful that obviously he did back me. But yeah, it's one of those things that whilst I'm still in the setup and whilst I'm playing for England, I weirdly don't feel like I've got time to kind of be proud about what I've done. You know, if you'd have told me a year ago, I'd have kind of done and achieved what I've done, I probably wouldn't have believed you, but that's just because I hadn't done it at this level. So, you know, all I've done since getting back in is, you know, trying to prepare for each series and trying to get better. You know, I know that there's parts of my game and plenty of them that need work on. So, you know, hopefully I can keep going and keep performing and keep scoring runs. You know, I don't know what my ceiling is, and I just want to keep, you know, playing the way I'm playing and, you know, playing match-winning knocks or contributing to this team winning, and hopefully I can be proud of what I achieve, you know, when my career comes to an end.
Just a couple of questions about that 16-17 tour, if I may. I don't think you'd been to the subcontinent before then, had you, in any cricket? Had you been there with England under-19s or not?
I know I've been to Dubai, and then I've been to India, obviously, as a kind of teenager, but nothing at that level or close to.
So, I mean, what everybody talks about in India, when you get to India, is the kind of the overwhelming nature of it, particularly when you're involved in cricket. And you've talked about the fact that, you know, you may not go out of your hotel room very much. Did you sense that there in 2016-17, and because you hadn't been to the subcontinent before, did that come as a bit of a surprise and a bit of a shock?
Testing my memory, which is not great now, and I think I've blocked out a fair bit of that trip. But you know what? I think I was a 21-year-old, and I was on tour with Alistair Cook, Joe Root, Ben Stokes, Jimmy brought, you know, all these guys who I'd watched for the previous years, and I was only a kid at the time. So I think for me it was incredible, and kind of that few months, even though it probably was, you know, the toughest of my career, I probably had the most fun, even though I'd probably be more bored at times now. I'm a bit older. But yeah, I think I was kind of, you know, even when I was netting, I was, you know, being paired with Rooty or whoever that may be. And it was, you know, I think it's every kind of young guy's dream who's having a net, trying to learn off those guys. And, you know, Rooty was actually the person who said to me before that second innings in Dhaka, you know, go and whack it, you know, go and switch at the first ball. And I kind of said, I can't do that. I'm opening the batting for England. And he just said, of course you can. You know, the little things like that I've always remembered. And yeah, and I just think it was an amazing experience for me. I was so young and, you know, it didn't work out. But yeah, I certainly took some learnings from it. And yeah, I mean, I've obviously toured the subcontinent quite a few times since then. Yeah. So, you know, this will be no shock for me. But we've got such a tight group of players that, you know, it will be really enjoyable. And I'm actually really looking forward to going out there. And I know it's going to be a challenge, but it's going to be a really good challenge.
It's quite interesting. You looking back, talked about the fun that you had and, you know, the enjoyment that you had, even though it didn't go well. I mean, sometimes when players in this group at the moment talk about the environment under Stokes and McCullum, there's a kind of implication that it wasn't always like that. And obviously we know that it's a little bit different, but it's kind of important to remember that it wasn't all bad as well under, I mean, Alistair Cook and Trevor Bayliss. Trevor Bayliss, a pretty laid-back coach, wasn't he? He wasn't as though he was, you know, cracking the whip every 2 seconds, and it was radically different. I mean, it is different now, but not surely that much different.
Yeah, I mean, it is a lot different. And, you know, Alistair Cook was, I think, most people's heroes kind of around my age, and, you know, what he achieved and everything was just incredible. But I remember my last innings of that series, and he basically said on a day 5 pitch, go out and block for the draw, and I got 0 off 20, caught short leg. And thinking back now, if him telling me that, I may as well have just turned around and kicked him over. I didn't have a forward defence against Spin, and it was day 5, and it was ragging. The only way I was going to contribute that day is if I got maybe 100 off 80 balls. So, they're different kind of messages that you get now. We obviously in this team speak about, not wanting to draw games and stuff, and we certainly won't be batting for the draw on day 5 of the game and stuff. And I think there's so many learnings that this group can take from previous times, and even different leaders. Ruti's led out there. He's probably learned so many different things. But I think that's the exciting thing about this group is it hasn't worked a lot in India, and why not go out and play in a different way? Why not go and put them under pressure and play in this way? It'd be interesting to see if Shami has a deep point first ball of the series to creeps. It'll be interesting to see if they stick to their guns, or if they do kind of similar things like Australia did.
Are you of the opinion, even in our era, I remember playing county cricket with the likes of Mark Waugh and Stuart Law, that the more it does, especially for a spinner, the more you have to counter-attack that and be more positive. But there's going to be a ball with your name around if you do push and prod. So do you feel that if it does spin big, you do have to be hyper-aggressive?
Yeah, I mean, the more it spins, my bat's going to be extremely horizontal. I'm going to be, but that's kind of one thing I've been working on. I kind of think to myself now, I've got over 10 sweep shots. Both sides of the wickets, and I did it a bit in Pakistan, and it's not that I'm trying to smack every ball for 4. I'm kind of got different gears to go up in all those different sweep shots, and it's something I've been thinking about. If it is spinning sideways and they've got men all around the bat, I might use my reverse sweep as a forward defence, without trying to give too much away. But, my theory around, when I watch people get out, when there's a short leg, man around the corner, silly point, a slip, and you kind of get stuck on the crease. I'm jinxing myself here if I play I get caught short leg, which is definitely going to happen now. But, I mean, what I'm going to try and do is get rid of those guys around me. And hopefully then life will be a bit easier. If they stay in, then fingers crossed you hit a few more boundaries and get a little score.
Ath, just bringing you in here, do you think we forget, as old-timers who didn't play much under, if at all, under DRS, the difficulty and challenge for the modern cricketer, in India in particular, against spin? Going back to that last tour, facing Akshar Patel with a new ball. In our day, kick it away, kick Murali away, Jimmy Adams kicking it away. With DRS, you can't do that. And you're just surviving the width of your bat.
I think it's a better game, for sure, because you have to use your bat and not your pad. And that's brought finger spinners back into the game. I was thinking about Nathan Lyon, to 500 wickets just before Christmas. He's an off spinner who doesn't have a doosra. 10 years ago, people were saying you had to have a doosra to be a successful off spinner. Now you've only got to spin it the kind of half the width of the bat because you've got to play with your bat. So it's definitely a better game. It's brought finger spinners into the game more. I think it's a much tougher game for batters now at the top of the order because umpires give you out more on the front foot. They've seen how many more balls are going to hit the stumps and because you have to play with your bat. So I agree with you. I think you always got to bear that in mind. In fact, when England were in India last time and they get blown away in one of the games, I can't remember which one now, whether it was in Ahmedabad or Chennai or somewhere. I remember writing a piece or talking about DRS, and you did that, excellent piece when England were in playing a T20 series in India, where you talked about the differences and the changes that DRS has made. So I think you've always got to have that in the back of your mind, and it makes it much tougher for sure. Ben, just to push it forward a little bit on something slightly different. You were in West Indies and in the Caribbean as well recently, and about England's white ball cricket, the challenges there, and your hopes across formats for the coming year, really, with the T20 World Cup coming up in June.
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously not the ideal kind of winter for the white ball stuff, but these things happen, and it doesn't take away what an incredible group of players they are and stuff. And you can see now even though the performances and results didn't quite go our way, you only have to look outside the squad and the talent of English cricket and how how tough it is to break into that white ball team. I've known it for years, and I kind of thought, I might get a little chance now, and it's still, so hard to break into. So, I don't know really, and I don't have any answers. I'm not kind of in and around that squad enough, I'd say. For me, really, it's about wanting to put performances in. I guess for that's for knots. I'm not really playing any franchise stuff at the minute with prioritising my cricket for England. So, I've just got to try and take any chance I can get. And yeah, I thought it went okay for me in the Caribbean. I kind of wish that 70 was 100 and stuff, but the 250 over stuff I've played in the last two series, it's been quite a young squad and really exciting and really, really good to play a part of. So, yeah, I don't even know if that squad in West Indies is going to be the same at back end of this summer. Things can change. So, I
know it was a very different set of players from the ones that went to the World Cup in India. But did you sense joining up as part of that white ball team, did you sense just that the confidence had taken a bit of a hit? I mean, I'm always amazed in sport how long it takes for a team and individuals to build confidence, but how quickly that can drain away on the back of a few defeats, which clearly had happened in the World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, we probably, what did we have? Maybe 4 or 5 lads who were there from the World Cup, I think. And I only have to think some of those guys, if I'd have gone straight to the World Cup from, straight from the English season, which some of the lads went to the IPL and played in the Ashes, having a World Cup at the end of that summer, it only took me a few weeks when I was trying to work out, potentially things that were going on. But, those guys must have been exhausted. And I know, people on Twitter will be going, that's their job and stuff. But, I remember sitting at home in that break before the Caribbean thinking I was exhausted. So, the guys out there and then, a few of them are coming then straight to the Caribbean to then play another trip. And, it's tough, and it's the world we're living in. And it's amazing that we've got all these opportunities to play so much cricket all the time. But, for some of those guys, it must have been a pretty flat out, 12 months with not much of a break.
You talked there about, the kind of calendar challenges or the schedule challenges and the fact that you're concentrating, I think you said, for the moment on England cricket, which, there's going to be loads of opportunities ahead for you. Just give listeners an idea of the challenges of the schedule at the moment, and indeed for international cricket, given the way that franchise cricket is impinging on the international game, and how you see things, not just from your own perspective, but the challenges for the game going forward, given all the conversations around it.
Yeah, I think, there's challenges and it's kind of a luxury. You see Clarkson retiring, he might not have played test matches again and stuff, but, there's a lot of good opportunities around the world to play in these competitions that aren't, Mickey Mouse tournaments. They're you're playing against some of the world's best, and you only have to look at the young English lads who have gone around the world playing in all these competitions and how many of them are getting picked up and improving. And I feel like we're just going to have to, accept that it's people's careers and they're going to make their own decision, and whether that works or not, we'll find out. But yeah, I said that a year ago that I was giving everything to England, and for me personally, these franchise gigs and the money that's being thrown around is amazing, but nothing beats scoring a test century for your country, or winning a series or winning a game. For me, that's something that I've always wanted growing up. It wasn't to play in the IPL. That's something that I would I'd love to do one day, and fingers crossed it will happen one day. But yeah, my main focus is on playing for England, and I think we've seen that with quite a few of the guys with the central contracts, how much it does mean for them. And I think there's also positives that when you do get to an age or you fall out of an England squad and you're a bit older, you can go and make this money and reap your rewards kind of at the end of that career.
Ben, a couple of minutes with you, just thinking ahead to the forthcoming tour. Then we'll just throw it forward slightly. I'm thinking of the venues actually. once upon a time an India tour, you'd look forward to Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, some of the great venues in Indian cricket. Slightly different this time. You're going to, from memory, Hyderabad, Rajkot, Vizag, Ranchi, Dharamshala. How many of those venues do you know, and what are you expecting?
I'm not sure if I've went to any of them, but Dharamshala, that's kind of the one ground that whenever I watch the World Cup, it's just like an incredible ground. And straight away, I was kind of, that's the one ground that I'm kind of looking forward to the most. But yeah, I don't know. Sunrisers, Brookie was obviously there in the IPL last year. I'm sure he'll have a few spots we can go to. But yeah, I don't think any of it was the same grounds as the last time I was there.
And mentally, I was listening to Rohit Sharma on the back of that Test match in Cape Town, where he's obviously asked about the pitch, and he said, "I don't mind playing on these pitches, but you have to be aware that." When you come to India, you're not going to complain about turning pitches. I mean, mentally, have you geared yourself for this, for a kind of no excuse trip, regardless of the kind of conditions that you may or may not have to put up with?
Yeah, I mean, I'm never one to really complain too much about that. You're going to India, you kind of know what you're expecting, and it'll be interesting. They're going to know the way we play, and I don't know if those pitches can potentially bring us in even more if we're going to be playing more shots. We'll just have to see. And I think it's going to be, as I said earlier, for me and Zach to kind of at the top of the order, give that feedback back as soon as possible. If we realise this pitch is going to be really tough, and if we get 180, 200, let's say, then, we'll try and do that as quick as we can. So, yeah, I don't know, to be honest. It'd be interesting if India and Rohit lost that Test match, if there would have been a few more complaints. But I know they did win it, didn't they?
They did. Thanks very much for your time. We wish you well both in the prep time in Abu Dhabi, and obviously when you get to India, I'm hoping to be there and catch up with you. Good luck with it all.
Cheers, guys.
Good luck,
Thank you very much.
How many of those venues have you been to, by the way? Hyderabad, Rajkot, Ranchi, Dharamshala and Vizag?
I think 4 I might have commentated on. I don't know if I played. I might have played in Hyderabad, actually, very early in my career. Dharamshala is a lovely place if it's not spinning. But that's one of the venues that might go through. And I thought it was a good question you asked him about excuses, actually. I have no excuses. And I don't think this team will. If it spins, it's the same for both sides. You've got to cope with that. Also remember that it could just do a little bit. We were there, under lights in various venues in India. But the way Shami bowled, the way Bumrah bowled, the way Siraj has just bowled in Cape Town. Yes, it's South Africa, it's not India, but that's a pretty good seam attack.
It's a different Indian management than last time, isn't it? It was Ravi and Virat last time we were there. Rohit and Rahul now. 2 slightly different characters, I would say. Do you think... I'm assuming that they will get the pitches that they ask for. Do you think they will ask for pitches that, how do I put this, maybe will likely last longer than 2 days?
I think what they should do, if I was an Indian management, were ask for good pitches that spin a bit. Because I think then their spinners and their batters will outbat and outspin ours. If they ask for pitches that become a bit of a lottery and turn huge, then it brings England's spinners into it. And the way Bazball goes about its business and the way England's batting goes, they won't die wandering. So I think that if England go behind, as they did last time, if England go ahead, India go behind, as they did last time, then I'd expect both Rohit and Rahul just to have a little tap on the groundsman's hut and say, we want it to spin.
And if it does, who becomes the key player for England? Root as ever?
Yeah, Root as ever. Root's batting against spin, but also Duckett. Duckett's playing of spin. Stokes is a fabulous player of spin. And their mindset, as we saw in Pakistan, when different pitches, didn't spin much at all, low, slow, but they get 500 in a day or whatever. So don't expect what we saw last time, where batters are just pushing and prodding. But the balance is still there. Like I spoke last week to Swanee about that balance of Cook getting 190 in India and Peterson getting 180 or whatever. 2 completely different, but both hugely successful. So still, high risk is high risk. So with Ravi Ashwin bowling it and it's spinning out of the rough, the big booming drive is still a high-risk shot. Jadeja angling it in and clipping to leg, or just using your bat pad together against Akshar Patel. These are areas that are just no-go areas, whatever mindset your batting lineup is. But the other thing I think India are waiting. There's been a lot of talk about Indian cricket, and there's been a lot of talk about baseball. And the two of them are just about to meet. And my sense out there in that World Cup, a lot of Indian fans are waiting to see how baseball down. They put it to bed. You know, they're waiting for that.
I mentioned the venues there that England are going to, which are kind of, how do you describe that? I suppose second-string venues. They're not the great venues of Indian cricket, are they? Do you think that, I mean, that could be simply because a lot of these venues that England are going to didn't have cricket during the World Cup and have international cricket there? Or does it reflect on the fact that Test cricket, a 5 Test match series between England and India, is not quite held in the same, perhaps, esteem that it would have been or was a few years ago, given the rise of the IPL and franchises?
I don't think so.
Or do you still think it's the same?
I think it's actually the growth of Indian cricket. I think, and I did that cricket in Mumbai thing, and I asked Ravi Shastri, I said to Ravi, what do you think's the biggest change? And he says, since Dhoni, since various, now the growth of Indian cricket. In the old days, it was Mumbai, it was Chennai, it was Bangalore, it was Delhi. Now it's all round India. They're finding players, and the big venues got the World Cup, and there's some other venues now, and that means hopefully, the crowds will be good. They've been waiting for cricket. I just hope on the back of that interview with Ben Duckett that they do get out and about a bit. And that first bit he spoke about, we're going to Abu Dhabi because we're locked in our rooms a bit. And we've been in India and we've seen that. We stayed in Mumbai at the Trident Hotel with the Indian team. Apart from getting out and in and out of the lift, we did not see them at all because you can't get out, you're bombarded. I just hope they try and get out. In Pakistan, they had that team room. Yeah. And they really enjoyed, they loved it. The one thing about the Stokes-McCullum side is they enjoy each other's company. Part of touring is getting out. And it'd be a shame to do 5 tests in India and spend it in your hotel room, I'd say.
Let's hope it's not a spin-wash tour similar to 1993, 30 years ago when England went down the pan. 3-0, I was on that tour. Did you do it, Matt? You did the main tour of India when? 2004?
Yeah, a bit later.
2-3?
Yeah.
The Tendulkar stumping, Ashley Giles bowling down his backside for half the day. That was under you, wasn't it?
Yeah, sorry for being the only captain to get Tendulkar stumped in a test match ever.
Right, we'll see you next week.